More on what to expect out of WWDC. Let's bring in Craig Moffett, partner and senior managing director at MoffettNathanson. He's got a sell rating, $141 price target on the stock. That is the lowest target among analysts tracked by FactSet. Craig, it's always great to get your take on things, all things Apple especially. Good to see you. The expectations going into WWDC are so low, and at the same time, that is sort of the table setting for a nice upside surprise. I'm just wondering, is there anything that could come out of this conference, in your view, that could at least allay the fears that Apple is completely behind in AI?
Yeah, I think so, Melissa. I agree with what your panel has been saying, that the expectations are really low. And so that is obviously a better setup than the other way around, like we had last year. What I would say, though, is the one thing that I haven't heard anybody discuss is, if you end up having to partner with, say, a Perplexity, or if you go off device to a cloud-based solution like OpenAI, just be aware that the problem with that is that takes off the table the upgrade cycle argument that has been really the driver of the multiple for so long. So, you know, remember when they came out of the last WWDC last year, the argument was that in order to do agentic AI on your device, you're going to need at least 8 gigabytes of memory, and you're going to need a neural processor for AI. And therefore, you're going to have to upgrade your device, and it's going to accelerate iPhone sales. You don't need an upgrade if you're going to do all of that in the cloud. And I think there is real pressure on Apple to find a solution, and very likely it's going to have to be a cloud-based solution. The other end of the other extreme isn't good either, right? That is the DeepSeek type of model that is so small that it can operate on the device without an upgrade either. So they're trying to thread a needle, which is it needs to be sufficiently demanding of the device that you have to upgrade your device, but not so demanding of the device that they fall behind what can be done in the cloud by their competitors. And it's a very, very tight window that they're trying to get through here.
So, Craig, I like your call. I like when you really put it out there being the lowest on the street, because that's really differentiates yourself from the street. But when you look at the headlines coming out of DeepSeek, where they were literally had a tailwind behind them because of the lack of spend. I get what you're saying, but the longer they lag in AI, that's a time decay. You would think that they're due for some sort of success. And I always believe that the upgrade cycle is about the camera. The camera's easier to improve than the rest of the phone.
Well, look, if the camera's the upgrade cycle, it's hard to imagine that you get to the accelerated upgrade cycle. And one of you guys have all been talking about the challenge posed by the high multiple. If you're going to put an upgrade cycle into the multiple in your terminal growth rate assumption, you're assuming that it's not a one-time cycle, but that you're permanently accelerating the rate at which people refresh phones. And it's been declining now for almost a decade. So you really have to change the way people think about upgrades, and it's going to take something pretty dramatic, I think, to say, no, I need to now start thinking about upgrading my phone every 2 or 3 years again, instead of what it's up to now, which is pushing 4, right? So the camera's probably not going to do it. I'm not sure whether I agree that being late to the party in AI makes it necessarily more efficient, because the challenge you get is that Apple's would-be competitors in AI and the agents that are out there are starting to define the game in ways that may not be advantageous for Apple, right? I mean, the other bull case for Apple, I suppose, is they develop an agent that you pay $20 a month for, and that it's just part of your services revenue for Apple. The problem with that is you have people like Manus that are developing their agents and others that are developing agents. And if the agent development goes on without Apple for too long, there's a very real risk that that becomes a business that is paid for by advertising and isn't subscription-based. Or you have all these different companies with different agendas. I think Meta would say they don't want it to be subscription-based. They want it to be advertising-based. Probably Google the same. So you have a lot of deep-pocketed players that are trying to aim at the same space with very different agendas.